And now we are thrilled to welcome Douglas Baker. Doug is chairman of the board and CEO of Ecolab. Ecolab protects people and vital resources through its leadership in water, in hygiene, in energy. Doug joined Ecolab in 1989, I'm told, after 7 years in brand management at Procter & Gamble, and serves on the board of directors of Target. Doug is also the very proud father of 3 children, I heard backstage.
Yeah.
Doug,
Great.
welcome.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Great.
So we just heard a bit about, changing the world from the impact investing philanthropy point of view, and I think you're here to tell us about changing the world from the business point of view. But let's start with your journey, right? You were an English major, I understand, and the conventional wisdom has it that that might be a fast path to minimum wage.
Unemployment.
Right. Well, I was going with minimum wage here, but all right. Yeah, you seem to have parlayed that into a pretty good gig. Can you tell us about how that happened?
Yeah. Well, I can't say, I could try to paint this like this was all laid out in a perfectly planned life. It was quite the contrary. And yeah, I went to college. I was a hockey player. That's what I was focused on. Let's just say my sophomore year was full of injuries. You sort of realize this isn't going to be your long-term success path. The best thing that happened to me is I quit. And then I had to get a little more serious about studies and other things. And I ended up to be an English major. Ironically, I'm much more a math brain than a literary brain. And I started taking a lot of English courses because I needed to learn how to write. And so you end up with all these credits and X amount of time. So I said, all right, I'll just finish out and play out the game. And I ended up with an English degree. And I ended up to be a better writer. When I got out of college, this is now 1981, which I know sounds frightfully a long time ago. It was. I just saw a bunch of my college classmates just this week. And for some reason, they all look old. I don't know how I manage. I'm just kidding. But you go, I got out of college, and the path I was really getting pushed to do was to go into the military, interestingly enough. And unemployment at the time was double digit. Interest rates, if you wanted to buy a house, 14%, 17, 18% for a car. It was really a lousy economic time. And it was going to be tough to get a job. And so, my father thought that maybe a little grounding in reality would be helpful. So I was going to go into the Navy and fly airplanes. But this was not my dream. This is really a dream sort of thrust upon me. And so I graduated for a variety of reasons in December. And I was supposed to start in February. I went out skiing for a few days ostensibly and ended up staying for the rest of the season, calling my parents and saying, you know what, I'm not going to do this Navy thing. It's not what I want to do. And I need to do I got to figure out what I want to do, because otherwise I'm not going to be passionate about it. This is like a 7-year commitment. And so it was really the first time where you sort of buck what your parents think is the right thing for you, which every one of us has to go through sooner or later, and decide what is your path. Now, they weren't excited that it was a ski bum, so I cleaned toilets. I was cleaning condominiums. Ironically, it probably plays forward in my current job, because we supply a lot of stuff for people to clean toilets. I am an expert. So anyway, that's what I did. We got through, I got out, and then it was time to look for a job. I waited tables, took a long time, but I ended up finding and getting finally 3 offers. But it was after a year of interviewing and everything else. And I went with Procter & Gamble. It was a third lower pay than my other offers, but better training. And I was really sort of, well, you know what I need to do? I need to learn. I want to get a place where I think they're going to be committed to helping me learn. And it was a wise decision in hindsight. The other offers were in like business forms. These are like the 8-part triplicate forms. Goldenrod was one of the color copies. None of you remember this stuff. That's the whole point. The whole industry is obsolete and gone. So thank God I didn't start my career there. So anyway, I went to P&G, I learned a bunch, and then I joined Ecolab. really for Ecolab was just as a company selling cleaning products and some food safety programs in the restaurant, hotel, lodging, and food and beverage production industries. Relatively small at the time. I just thought it had a great growth path. So there's no altruism in this. I was really still very focused on career and development and everything else. And I think a lot of this awakening happened over periods of time. And I would say my biggest epiphany, I think, in leadership, I finally get promoted to general manager after a number of years. I was in Europe and I can go on and on. But I take over a company that we had recently bought, and we're in trouble. And the largest customer has told us they're going to leave us. And if that in fact happens, the company will likely have to close down, be consolidated in others, and there's going to be this monster job loss. And I'm sitting one day, and of course, first it goes, unfortunately, the human part goes, woe is me, not my fault, what happened? And you're going through all this nonsense in your mind, and finally you realize, I'm sitting out watching the parking lot during a shift change, and in comes about 100 cars, and out goes 100 cars. And these are the folks that are working in our plant producing the products. And you finally realize, you know what, this is not at all about me. If this thing goes down, I'll have a bad day, week, and I'll find a job and probably be just fine. But the folks working in this plant are rooted in this community, aren't mobile. There are not other opportunities because that community used to be based upon textile and furniture, all of which had left. And there weren't other jobs. And so it's this awakening of what is leadership all about, and it's not about you, it's about those that you are serving in many ways. And so I don't want to take it, but for me it was sort of this defining moment of awakening up to what's your real role in the world and responsibility. And I'd say from that moment, a lot of things changed for me.
So, Doug, Ecolab has a tremendously inspiring story about how to pursue and succeed in sustainability, but also financial performance, how they can come together. Did this awakening lead to that? And can you tell us something about this story?
Yeah, and I think it did because you go through and, okay, my businesses did well, and then I get promoted, and guy ahead of me doesn't do well, gets fired, and so all of a sudden I'm CEO at 45, right, young. And then you're looking and say, wow, I've got a lot of responsibility, but I have a lot of ability to impact things. Yeah. And so we started really, I think, understanding the company, understanding what we do, not just on the surface, but in total. And trying to really develop what we ended up calling first total impact and then net impact. Because what we're trying to understand is the trades being made both economically, environmentally, socially, and all the rest. And how do we make sure that we end up with positive equations as we go through things? So this is an intellectual journey in a lot of ways.
And what year was this about?
This would have been 2004, 2005. And through this journey, we ended up really understanding a lot of our power was certainly we heightened food safety. I think we've single-handedly had maybe the single biggest impact in the number of food safety. We do all the antimicrobials for Listeria, E. coli, Salmonella, increasingly C. diff, Legionella disease. These antimicrobials now in many cases are quite benign after use. They turn into vinegar, are completely bio-friendly. And so, these are the development paths that we've been on, i.e. you wanted things you could put on protein and not have to wash it off because water itself is contaminated, but also are ingestible by humans. I wouldn't swig the stuff. It's good, but it's not that good. So, but we want it to be safe for humans and environment and everything else. And so it's this journey. But what we've learned and started understanding is really how we can have big impact on the environment too, particularly around water, which increasingly became a big problem for our customers. And so we ended up making a big acquisition to become bigger in water because we had big ideas around water, but a small footprint. And you need scale to handle scale problems, right? I don't know how else to say it. And the water challenge in the world is large. So quick stats, here's your water education. 1% of the water in the world is usable fresh water. Of that 1%, only a third of it is surface water, lakes and streams. The majority of it is underground. Water is not evenly distributed around the world. Most of it, as I just said, is out of sight, and it's priced wicked cheap. In many cases for good reason. But to give you a perspective, a barrel of oil right now, I don't know what it's trading at today, everything's crashing, but let's just say it was 70 bucks or 80 bucks, depending on if you're in Europe or US. Right now, a barrel of water, or the equivalent, would be 4 cents. All right, so water is cheap, but water's heavier than oil, and it costs more to move it. So the reason water's a problem is it's not available universally across the globe, and it's too cheap to move like oil. Oil's not universally available either, but it's valuable so you can move it. So water is a very localized story, but if you do the averages, we right now are already at a water shortage position on fresh water, but we're projected to go from 7.5 billion to 9.5 billion or 10 billion by 2050. There's going to be a simultaneous increase in the middle class, which is a good thing. However, when you go into the middle class, you change diets, you go from cereals to proteins. When you do that, a 50% increase in population will need 70 to 100% more calories. The biggest use of water is growing food. And so a case where you're already at a problem is going to get worse and worse. Second thing everybody wants when they get in the middle class is refrigeration, air conditioning, and they want to plug in all their devices at night, just like all of us. And when that happens, they need more electricity. And the second largest use of water is electricity. So you can see you've got this nexus coming, which is a real problem. And this is with or without climate change. So I believe in climate change. I think we got a real problem. Not everybody does, and I basically say, look, I don't want to even argue about it. Here's the deal. All you have to believe in is math if you want to believe in the water problem. And that's an easier sell sometimes. And so we need people on this. And so we are on a mission to reduce water consumption in the industrial space, which is roughly 50% of the water consumption. So that's, if we can close that gap, you can make a huge dent in this coming water shortage, i.e. teach people how to make more using less water.
So what is the strategy for reducing water in industrial? Is it new technology? Is it new techniques? Is it education?
Yeah, you know, the technology exists. It's recycle, reuse, right, fundamentally, and take pressure off fresh water. Everything's been invented. So everything we make as a world, whether you do it in a small shop, big shop. I mean, honestly, big production is more efficient than small production. I know some people hate to hear this, but you know, I'm sort of like earth response to what actually happens, not to what everybody wants to believe happens. So, I like craft beer more than I like big beer. Big beer is more efficient on water. Okay, it is considerably more efficient on water. However, we need to get them both to be better on water. And so what we're working on, we have technology. When you use water, it's quite simple. It evaporates. And what evaporates is pure water, and what's left is the impurities and some remaining water. So water quality goes down as you use it more and more. And when the quality goes down, it becomes corrosive and quite harmful to equipment, metals, and all the rest. The Detroit scene that we've heard about, right? The lead in the water in Flint, Michigan. This is water doing what it does. It naturally wants to take minerals out, that's its corrosive. And if you don't have the water chemistry right and you're putting it through pipes with lead, it's going to leach the lead and you're going to have lead in your water. And this is a known science and known challenge. This isn't new stuff that we're learning. But this you have to manage in industrial applications or you'll create environmental problems. So it's really just using this technology. We have unique technology in teaching people to do this. The aha was that we can do this and save companies money. Because when you reduce water, you reduce energy. So it's a CO2 benefit and a water benefit. So we single-handedly can have this monster impact on water and CO2 reduction because we're in 1,000 factories around the world. We're in 3 million restaurants. I mean, we got big leverage. And we are on a mission to use that leverage positively by marrying economic benefit and environmental benefit. Don't pit these things against each other. It's a stupid, it's a fight you don't need to have. It's like when you marry the two dang things, you get big impact and you really start moving the thing, right?
Yeah. I have to poke at something. You said single-handedly. Do you have partnerships with other companies, with nonprofits, with government to help make all this happen?
Yeah, yes, many.
I thought that
I mean, yeah, I mean, look, we're in venture funds. We're always looking for technology that we can utilize to help do what needs to be done. You know, you don't get any extra credit. I really say the mission is, and if I've had an awakening as an environmental concerned individual, call me an environmentalist, I don't really care. It's back to that saying, Earth responds to what actually happens. And you can get into these debates at times, and it's really, well, what is the real science? And nobody has a monopoly on the understanding. And so we go and challenge and try to learn and understand it. So it takes partnership. So we partner with the NGOs. We'll challenge each other. We have NGOs come in and say, we don't like this ingredient. And there's been times we go, well, what's wrong with it? And they tell us, and we look at it and go, ooh, you're right. We got to get out of this ingredient. And we do. There's other times they've come in and said, we don't like this ingredient. And say, what is it? What's it doing? And we look at it. We had a famous one where it was really a huge hotel chain. Their sustainability group, who we're very close to, came and said, hey, we got this much greener formula for laundry. So we started looking at it, but the problem with the formula, it was going to take 7 times more product than ours. It was going to take 14 times more trucks of goods because it wasn't concentrated, 700% more water, 400% more energy. And we basically said, hey, let's not get fixated on an ingredient. Let's get fixated on what's the net impact. And we will work to get rid of this ingredient over time. But right now, you're a lot better off with this ingredient and these end results than you would be getting rid of it. Because the trade for Earth is terrible, right? I mean, it's really bad. And so some of this is you've got to be willing to go, what is the actual truth here? Because there's also popular science and there's real science. And I would just say, you know, you got climate deniers and then you've got science deniers on the left too. I mean, it happens. And what we all have to do is keep challenging ourselves. I think outside the lines is great. I just say, just play where the lines need to be and understand what really is going to impact what and focus on that.
I often would tell my team, if the answer is obvious, then you haven't looked hard enough.
Yeah.
Because you really have to look at the system overall that you're impacting. So we have this great coalition and audience of change makers and people who want to use their career for purpose. And we heard yesterday, and we heard again from Jean, about fostering change from where you sit. And we heard a story yesterday from Anthony about somebody who created change from within the company, driving up a new idea and getting to the CEO. Being the CEO, how would you like these people to approach you when they have a good idea? What should they do with it?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have 50,000 people on our team. You know, we need all 50,000 engaged, thinking, pushing, challenging, and everything else. I mean, there's nothing better than an advocacy organization where everybody going to work every day thinks they're on point to help drive change or direction, or sometimes stop change. It's not going to be positive for an organization. And if you can actually create that, you got a lot of juice, because then everybody's in it. And you drive to work differently if you think what you're going to do matters versus, you know, somebody's going to give me a list of stuff to do today. So how would I? Yeah, well, look, I mean, the product I was talking about in laundry, right? I had zero to do with that invention, right? Zero. We may have created the kind of strategic framework, but that was invented by a whole host of teammates in our company pushing and trying to understand. Because in the end, you know what that does? It reduces typical laundry, water, and energy by over 50% in all the hotels. And they're adopting it. And so hotels, you know, we use towels once and we throw them on the ground, unless you're one of the good stewards that finds somehow to hang the towel in the hotel. You know, they don't have any towel racks, right? But, you know, you can get magical into the closet, hang it, whatever you're going to do. But most people throw them on the ground. So reducing this water and stuff helps them reduce their environmental footprint, and they save money. I didn't come up with that, right? But people fought for that.
Well, I wanted to quibble with your comment that you had nothing to do with that, because I think creating the space, creating the culture that allows people to see where the lines ought to be, as you put it, and color there, is very much what a leader is, I think, in this day and age. So we thank you for that. Yeah. Any last words for our audience here as they embark on their careers about what they should look for in a company?
Well, it's obvious you're here, so you know your personal awakening happened much earlier in your life than mine. So I salute you. But I would just look. I think life is one of those precious gifts that we've been given, and we're all given unique abilities and strengths. And to me, our payback for these gifts is utilizing them to the maximum of our capability. I think that's what we try to do as organizations. That's what we should do individually. And you know what, being human is really frustrating sometimes because, I mean, as Gene was saying earlier, yeah, you know, you make mistakes all the time. I mean, I still do stuff and I go, oh my gosh, why did I react that way? Why can't I be more patient in these situations? Here's who I'd like to be. And you know, it's a journey constantly of striving to be better, striving to learn, striving to have more impact. And you're early in your journey. I think it's a great thing. I think there's so many ways to do it. So I recently had a good friend of my daughter's. They just both got out of college. And I'm a complete advocate for NGOs, nonprofits, and everything else. But she was a water engineer. And she's going to go into a nonprofit. And so I meet Nikki, and I'm talking to Nikki. I said, hey, Nikki, you know, you want to make a change? Come to our company. Right? We've got 3 million customer sites in 170 countries where if you develop technology, it can be leveraged and make a huge difference in water consumption around the world. Honestly, you can have a bigger impact on making a difference in water in our company than virtually any place else. It's not going to be the first day. You're not going to get in here and somehow magically start in June and by July have saved the world. It's not that quick, right? But it is really a place you can have impact. And so my, I guess, ask is this. You know, big business, I'm in a big business, right, gets a bad name. I will say, I know a lot of people in big businesses who have big hearts and want to do the right thing by the world and by the people and by everything else. Yeah. And there are bad people in big business. But there are also bad people in little businesses. You know, there are bad people are kind of universally strewn across the world, as I've seen, right? They're in all shapes, forms, and everything else. And I've met a bunch, and you have too. But mostly what I've met is great people. And in these businesses, you can have huge, huge impact. And we are not going to solve the world's energy problems and the world's carbon in the air problems and the world's water, hunger, food challenges without scale companies being at the forefront. It's just not going to work mathematically. You can't feed 10 billion people otherwise. And so I also invite those where this sings to join a company because you can have such a big impact. Those whose heart takes in a nonprofit, God bless you, we'll fund you. But we also need people who can understand how you can make impact in a company as well. And we need it. This world needs it, and we need you. And I thank you for doing this, taking the time here, and listening to this 20 minutes. So thanks.
Thank you, Doug. You're a real inspirational leader.